Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hockey on the Spot with Brandon Barenfeld. I'm Brandon Barenfeld. Thank you for joining me. This is episode 33 of Hockey on the Spot, and today we are going to officially close out both the 30 teams in 30 days and the month of August with a full 30 in 30 recap. Basically, short recap on each and every team that we talked about in the past month with short summaries and hopefully under 20 minutes. Not too much detail. So here we go. Starting with some signings that have happened since August 7th. Starting with some re-signings. Gustav Nyquist re-signing with the Detroit Red Wings. Zach Boychuk re-signing with the Carolina Hurricanes. Chris Tanev re-signing with the Vancouver Canucks. Steve Beijan re-signing with the Calgary Flames. Also, Adam Henrique gets re-signed by the New Jersey Devils. They signed him one day after their video. A good re-signing for them. And good re-signings for every other team as well. But there are also a couple of new additions as well. Um, like, for example, Brandon Siegel coming over from the New York Rangers, signs with the Washington Capitals. Just a depth player. And a couple moves made by the Anaheim Ducks as well. Unfortunately for them, Sheldon Souray will be out for 3 to 6 months, and so they had to sign somebody to replace him in that span of time. They signed Mark Fistrick to a 1-year, $900,000 contract. He's coming over from the Edmonton Oilers. Shutdown defenseman. Won't be an exact replacement for Sheldon Souray, but will add some depth to their lineup. And also, who knows if he'll even play? This could be Sammy Vatanen's time to maybe prove himself and get into the lineup. But Mark Fistrick will be there as a reserve shutdown defenseman. So a good signing by the Anaheim Ducks. Speaking of the Anaheim Ducks, some other news in Anaheim Ducks land. As of yesterday, Teemu Selanne is back. He signed a 1-year deal with the Anaheim Ducks. Great for them. They knew it was coming. He was not going to go anywhere else. However, we all know that this will probably be his final year in the National Hockey League, along with Daniel Alfredsson, Martin Brodeur, and Jaromir Jagr, most likely. Obviously, again, the Mikhail Grabovski signing we talked about yesterday. That was also went down. And then there was another signing as well. Douglas Murray would sign with the Montreal Canadiens. Long story short, same situation as the Anaheim Ducks. Alexei Emelin is hurt. He'll be out not as long as Sheldon Souray, but at least until the end of the holidays. And so they needed a shutdown defenseman to replace him. So they get Douglas Murray, who's much older, not even getting any younger, but an intimidating shutdown defenseman wherever he plays, and a fan favorite. So a good situation, because now when Emelin does come back, they'll have a lot more depth on defense, at least for this year. So good signing by Montreal. And that is basically all the signings and re-signings that have occurred since August 7th, when the Ottawa Senators re-signed Stefan DaCosta. Um, so it's been rather quiet lately. Hopefully things will pick themselves up again. But there are still a bunch of unrestricted free agents on the board as well. Nazem Kadri and Cody Franson, both for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're looking to get those two guys signed. Cody Hodgson for the Buffalo Sabres, looking to get him re-signed. Michael Bodker for the Phoenix Coyotes. They'll look to get him re-signed. Marcus Johansson still on the board for the Washington Capitals. He's a vital piece to their team. They'll try to get him signed up. Alex Pietrangelo, probably the biggest restricted free agent still on the board. St. Louis Blues really need to get him signed. He is probably their best player. They're really working hard to get him signed. And then, of course, for the New York Rangers, they actually still got two guys on there, one a little more important than the other. John Moore is still on there. They'll probably re-sign him just so they can have another defenseman. But the real big guy still on there for them is Derek Stepan. They're going to look to get him re-signed as well. And then, of course, also another restricted free agent, Jared Cowan, a shutdown defenseman for the Ottawa Senators. He's looking to sign long-term. So we'll see how that plays out. So those are some of the bigger restricted free agents on the board. So these teams will definitely look to get these guys signed up. Now, as far as for their respective 2013-2014 seasons are expected to go, um, each and every team is definitely good in their own way. And a lot of these teams, they're going to be good in the future years to come. Teams like the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning are building for the future. They know they're not going to get in the playoffs this year, and same with the Calgary Flames. These three teams, also the Colorado Avalanche, these four teams are building for the future, and they know that they're not going to get in the playoffs right now. The Colorado Avalanche actually may have a better chance than the other three, but they they are building for the future. The Edmonton Oilers basically have their future built, but they're still in the last stage of development, so it could take them another year. They'll be and then maybe be ready to make the playoffs as soon as next season. So that is an interesting situation to be in. You know, they're going to be developing some good young players for years to come. Then you got teams like the New Jersey Devils and the New York Islanders that, are good, but they're probably not good enough to handle a full 82 game schedule, that they're going to just come short. Same with the Detroit Red Wings. I honestly feel the Detroit Red Wings are not a playoff team. I know a lot of people think they do, but just considering who's ahead of them and who other teams have, and looking at their defense, they do not have a good defense. They're stacked on offense, but they're not good on defense. And Jimmy Howard is a goalie who needs a good defense in front of him in order to be good. So that could be a big problem for the Detroit Red Wings this season. Not to mention, let's face it, they don't have a legitimate backup goaltender. Jonas Gustafsson is not a good backup goaltender. And Peter Mrazek is still young. So, and then you got Joey McDonald, who, again, also not a reliable backup. He was good last year, but that was in a shortened season. So I don't think the Detroit Red Wings are a playoff team. Then you still got a team like the Anaheim Ducks, who are a playoff team, but still need another piece to their team. They need a second line center. And the two guys that they were looking for in particular, Derek Roy and Mikhail Grabovski, have both been signed, particularly Derek Roy. He signed with the St. Louis Blues, and Mikhail Grabovski signed with the Washington Capitals. That was very recently. So now you got to ask the big question. Who's their second line center? Nick Bonino played there last year, and he was very good in that 7-game series against Detroit. He could stick in that spot. Or it could be time for maybe a guy like Peter Holland to step into a full-time role and take a second-line center job. Or maybe move Kyle Palmieri from wing to center. He is a guy who can play center. He's moved to wing, but they can move him back to center and maybe play him there. It's a good situation to be in for the Anaheim Ducks. They have a lot of options as far as their youngsters, and then at some point they could trade for a guy who they could rely on as their second line center. Maybe a guy like Ryan O'Reilly from the Colorado Avalanche, who many guys would want to have on their team when his no trade clause is over. It'll be over by the trade deadline this year. So Anaheim, they have the youth and the veteran leadership to make the playoffs, not to mention being coached by an offensive-minded coach whose offense was the highlight of the regular season year in and year out. You can bet your butt on it that Anaheim's going to be among the top offensive teams in the National Hockey League, with considering who they have as a coach. Very successful in the regular season. In the playoffs, however, that'll be the big concern. So we'll see how that all plays out for them. The New York Rangers, they're also in a situation where they got a new coach who also had an offense that highlighted the league with the Vancouver Canucks, Alain Vigneault. The Rangers could hopefully build on that and hopefully become the offensive team that they've been dreaming to be. They still have that great defense. So, and of course, probably the best goaltender in the National Hockey League, quite arguably, in Henrik Lundqvist. So that is why they are a playoff team. The Pittsburgh Penguins, they are absolutely stacked up and down their roster. They have the roster potential to be a first-place team. The only real concern is that they don't have a lot of depth now with Tyler Kennedy and Matt Cook gone, and now with Pascal Dupuis moving back up as a top 6 forward. They don't really have a good bottom 6. That could be the weakness for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and it is their bottom 6 problems, which is why I don't think that they'll win the Stanley Cup. Then you got a team like the Carolina Hurricanes. One thing I got to mention about the Carolina Hurricanes that will excite many fans: new uniforms this year. They got new, cleaner uniforms as a symbol that they're ready for a fresh new start. And why not? They had a great start to their season last year, and let's face it, last year they would have been a playoff team had Cam Ward been healthy. Well, now he's back to that same form he was at in the beginning of the season. He's 100%, and he's in probably the best physical condition of his career. And the offense is stacked. They are stacked up front, and they could get some even more help, as it looks as if that they might be sending a training camp invite to Brendan Morrow as when training camp arrives. Montreal Canadiens also interested, but it's looking more likely that it will be the Carolina Hurricanes. If he progresses well and signs with them, then they're going to be loaded up front. The real concern for them is on defense. They have a quick defense, but they mostly offensive defensemen. So that could be the big concern for the Carolina Hurricanes. They don't have a consistent defense. The only solid defensive defenseman they have, unfortunately, is Tim Gleason. You can't win with just one shutdown defenseman. So that could be the big concern for the Carolina Hurricanes this season. Then you look at a team like the Columbus Blue Jackets, another team with playoff potential and a good goalie. The Vezina Trophy winner from last year, Sergei Bobrovsky, and they got some leadership now with Nathan Horton in the lineup. I think they're not ready, though. I just feel that they're going to come up just short and that they need another year to own their skills and learn to be a team. Plus, considering who's ahead of them. Like I said, the Carolina Hurricanes. I think they're better than the Blue Jackets, the Devils, the Islanders, the Red Wings, and the Flyers. The Philadelphia Flyers. I think they're the second best team among those 6. Among those 6. And, they made a lot of signings this year. Ray Emery, Vinny LeCavalier, and Mark Streit, who they acquired in a trade. They have a loaded lineup now. However, I think they also have some kids that are still young, that are just kids, and their situation in goal is not good. They have Ray Emery and they have Steve Mason. They don't have a legitimate starter. Emery was the best backup goalie in the league last year, but that was as a backup goalie. He needs to be better. If the Flyers are going to be a playoff team, he needs to be a full-time starter. He needs to put his backup success in a starting role. Either that or Steve Mason needs to get back into the form he was in when he won the Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year in the 2008-2009 season, when he led the Columbus Blue Jackets to their only playoff appearance. Then you also look at a team like the Boston Bruins and the Chicago Blackhawks. Look at those two teams. The two teams that went up against each other in the Stanley Cup Finals this year. The two of them didn't retool their roster completely, mostly got rid of players in their bottom 6. The Bruins made the most significant move of either of those two, and maybe of any team in general. The biggest trade, trading Tyler Seguin, Rich Peverley, and prospect defenseman Ryan Button to the Dallas Stars for Louis Eriksson and prospects Joe Morrow, Riley Smith, and Matt Frazier. So they have a lot of young talent in the upcoming year. They also signed Jarome Iginla. He will replace Nathan Horton's role. Then you got the Chicago Blackhawks. They didn't make a whole lot of moves. They traded David Bolin and Michael Frolik, which could be a problem as far as their penalty killing goes. Well, Michael Frolik particularly. But they didn't do too much, and they have a dynasty-like team. If they win another Stanley Cup, they will officially be labeled a modern-day dynasty. No question. Then you have teams like the Nashville Predators and the Winnipeg Jets, who are both bubble teams. Also throw the Phoenix Coyotes and the Dallas Stars in there. They're all bubble teams, but honestly, I think the Nashville Predators are better built than those guys to make the playoffs. Though they don't have a strong offense by any means, their defense is going to look to have a comeback year, and they have a great goaltender in Pekka Rinne. Now adding Seth Jones to that lineup, a guy who's expected to be a game changer, guy who they did not even expect to fall their way. They have the defense now with Shea Weber, Seth Jones, Kevin Klein, Roman Josi. They are absolutely stacked on defense. Matthias Ekholm. These guys are going to be absolutely fantastic as far as their defense is concerned. Oh my gosh. It's that defense that's going to get them in the playoffs. The Winnipeg Jets, they definitely have the looks of a team that could be ready to make the playoffs. However, I just don't see it. I think Andre Pavlik is a good goalie, but I don't think he's a great goalie. And I don't trust him, honestly. He gives up way too many goals, and the defense can prove to be very inconsistent. So that's why I don't think they'll make the playoffs. Phoenix Coyotes, when I did their video, I said that they could be a playoff team, and I still believe they could. I think they would be the most likely candidate to throw the Nashville Predators out. They now have a legitimate top-line center on their team, and Mike Smith could look to have a comeback year. But that's the real big worry. Was that a one-time thing for Mike Smith? Is he just a one-hit wonder? That will be the big question for the Phoenix Coyotes this season. Then they signed him long-term. They signed him for 6 years. And I don't like that because I don't know if he's going to be that good. We don't know. And then the Dallas Stars, completely retooling their lineup, but I'm still unconvinced. I do think that they need more. So that's why I don't think they'll make the playoffs. And then you look at Kari Lehtonen, and though he's been generally healthy since coming over to the Stars, that health factor is still a real big concern. So they don't and Dan Ellis, not a trustworthy backup to be a starter. He proved that in Carolina. So it's definitely somewhat of a weird situation for them. Then you got the San Jose Sharks, who are also getting new uniforms this year, like the Hurricanes and the Dallas Stars. The San Jose Sharks, they do have the tools to be a playoff team. Absolutely. They make it year in and year out. However, they just don't. They can never seem to get over the hump. They can never seem to get over that hump. And when they do get to the Western Conference Finals, they choke. They get either swept or lose in 5 games. Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau, and Dan Boyle, they're not getting any younger. The new youth, the new core of their team is coming in. Logan Couture, Joe Pavelski, Matt Irwin could be in there. They have a good future ahead of them. But as far as the immediate, they're not ready to really make the Stanley Cup Finals yet. Again, and then you got the LA Kings, who I think have the potential to win the President's Trophy this year. Stacked up and down their lineup. Offense, defense, and one of the best goaltenders to boot. They are absolutely stacked, and with Willie Mitchell coming back healthy, they're going to be a real solid team. They're going to be hard to play against, and I would not want to be going up against them anytime soon. So, LA Kings, I think they definitely could win the President's Trophy, but I don't see a Stanley Cup for them. Same with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Minnesota Wild, they got some good guys. Zach Parise, now playoff experience, they could get back in. So, there are a lot of teams in the NHL. St. Louis Blues, they still got to get Alex Pietrangelo signed. If they could do that, they could be a strong candidate to win the Stanley Cup. Ottawa Senators, they get with or without Jared Cowan, they got the offense now with Bobby Ryan on board. They definitely got the skills to be a top team in the league. Toronto Maple Leafs, they got a great situation in goal, and the big free agent name to boot, David Clarkson, though I still don't like the contract. So there are some great teams in the league this year. There are some teams with absolute potential. And then finally, the Vancouver Canucks as well. Under John Tortorella, I think they could thrive. So that's pretty much the big thing. That is my predictions for each team. Overall, I think each team is unique in its own way. Okay, guys, that'll do it. Finally, for the 30 and 30, we officially close out 30 and 30. This has been episode 33 of Hockey on the Spot with Brandon Barenfeld. I'm Brandon Barenfeld. Thank you guys for joining me. See you in September. Thank you and have a great day.